So having paid for a room and cabin upgrade, we've decided to make a formal complaint. Second time ever after nearly 20 cruises. We're really unhappy with this cabin that we've been given. There was one issue that tipped us over the edge, and it was pretty unpleasant, and that was blood all over the shower curtain when we got into the shower last night. But it's just one of a few issues we've found. Tell us if you think we're being unreasonable. So let's take a look at how we got here. A little problem in our cabin when we arrived was that the toilet didn't flush. It wouldn't take any solid materials away at all. Now, we did report that to our steward pretty promptly, and we've been out tonight, had a meal. We're pretty jet lagged and tired, so it's not going to be a really late one. But we've come back to our cabin now only to find that the maintenance team haven't attended to it, so we've got no working loo again. That's not a great start to our Princess experience. Hopefully it doesn't set the scene for things to come, but you know, it's one of those things. It's this style of ship does seem to have problems with its plumbing. We have been on similar ships which have had similar issues, but you kind of hope that you know you're not going to get that for the entire length of the cruise. I mean, say it wasn't working at all even when we arrived, so they hadn't done the pre-cabin checks correctly to ensure it was flushing before we even got in the cabin. I would suggest it was, you know, when you lifted the lid there was all pooled water and everything in there to start with. So not a great start, Princess. You know, please improve.
Okay, here's the problem with the toilet. You can see the tissues aren't flushing, and it doesn't flush, it just stays there. Okay, now we reported it when we got on board. I've had to go and chase them up. I've just had a phone call from reception saying they fixed it. They clearly haven't, so I'm going to go marching back to reception and see if I can get them to fix it. Oh dear.
So guest services have reopened the issue with the toilet. They claim it's only been open a couple of hours as a complaint issue. But even so, I mean, we did raise it when we got aboard. Obviously it was delayed in being reported, but even after a couple of hours you'd expect them to at least done something. And of course they haven't actually been into the cabin at all to actually try and fix it. Apparently we're going to get somebody to come to the cabin this time, so let's see what happens. I really could do with some sleep. So, toilet flushing problem update. After my second complaint to reception, about 20 minutes after that, somebody did arrive at the cabin and fix it, which is great. So the toilet is now working again. We can now shower and get our heads down and get some sleep. One of the things we did find when we were waiting for the mechanic to sort of come and fix the toilet, we managed to find a pair of spectacles down in the lip here behind the curtain there, which were from the previous occupant, we assume, which again I think is indicative of how well the cabin was prepped before we took it on. Obviously there was a spectacles case, it says Specsavers on it, there's a pair of prescription glasses in it, and that was just down in there, just behind the curtain there. So that obviously hasn't been cleaned or checked before we actually boarded the ship today. In the morning we'll pop that back to reception and hopefully somebody will be able to claim it as lost property. And when we went to draw the curtains, we found these. There's a Specsavers case from the previous rooms or cabins occupants as well, and inside the glasses are inside. So these look like prescription glasses, and some poor soul is now missing their glasses. Anyway, we'll give these back to reception. So building on the theme that our cabin hadn't been well prepared before we, arrived and embarked yesterday, this looks like blood on our shower curtain. God knows, that's not very pleasant. Well, we'll have to have a complaint about that and get that changed this morning. So we paid for a room upgrade to an outside cabin, and we asked for a double bed configuration, which they've given us, but the bed is pushed up against the wall. Obviously that increases noise from the neighbouring cabin. It's clearly a twin cabin that's been, they've squashed it together here. So there's the light units there, and then this central unit here is big enough for a twin cabin. Again, when you pay for a room upgrade, is that what you want? So further evidence of the lack of preparation of the cabin is that these two sort of shampoo and conditioner bottles were left in from the previous guest. That can't be right. So let's just summarise. Toilet blocked when we got here. It took them nearly 6 hours to resolve that. We've got the issue of the glasses from the previous cabin's occupants that were left here. We've got shampoos and conditioners left from the previous occupants. And then we've got the bed configuration. This is clearly not a cabin that's normally used for double occupancy in a double bed configuration. It's been pushed up against the wall. And then of course there's that horrible congealed blood all over the shower curtain. I just felt we had to complain, and I'm going to give Princess Cruises a chance to redeem themselves, but I'm not happy. But what sort of response did we get from Princess after we raised the complaint? So within an hour of raising the formal complaint, we had a new shower curtain installed, which was nice. It's a brand new one. And we also had our room serviced with some dressing gowns provided as well. Now, they weren't provided previously. And we also got a personal apology from our cabin steward. That was nice. That was probably the nicest thing so far. So it's been a day since we formally raised the complaint up at guest services here, and we still haven't had a response from the ship or the cruise line, which was a bit disappointing. Last night at our meal with our lovely friendly guests, some of them were sort of the highest loyalty membership program members as well. They were horrified and said, well, you should go back and ask for a response. So I did that this morning. Thank you for that advice. They were very polite and friendly. The lady on the desk went and got the manager, a lady called Claudia, who came out, and again she did ask what I was expecting from the cruise line. That took me a little bit by surprise, and I did explain that normally in any kind of business, when somebody makes a formal complaint and you get it all written down and everything like that, then the business on the receiving end of that complaint issues a formal reply, normally summarising their investigation and what action they took. And to be honest, that's all I'm expecting. And I did say to her that I hadn't received that and that I was expecting that. Her initial response was that they wouldn't normally do that, which I did find quite surprising. However, she did say that a lady called Vanessa on the file was down as coming to pay us a visit and explaining what they'd done. And apparently that was supposed to have taken place last night, and the record showed that she had done that. However, we can vouch for the fact that Vanessa didn't come and see us last night. And we did say that, well, we haven't spoken to anybody, nobody's come to see us, nobody's come to explain, and that obviously we were expecting maybe something put under the door to say that thanks for reporting this. The Claudia said that she would take that away and speak to Vanessa personally, and again apologised for the conditions of the cabin. She did ask whether all the issues had been resolved in the cabin, and she said that they wouldn't normally issue anything formally until anything had been resolved in the cabin. And again, that kind of contradicted her earlier statement. Earlier on she was saying that they don't normally issue a formal response, and then at the end of the conversation she was saying, well, they'll only issue a formal response if everything's been resolved. And as you can see, well, the bed's still pushed up against the wall. Yes, we got a new shower curtain. Yes, I got bathrobes, and yes, all the lost property has been handed in. But yeah, it was an odd exchange this morning, and you kind of judge a business by how they respond when things go wrong. So far, we're doing all the work, and Princess haven't really shone yet. There is still time. We'll see what Vanessa comes back with, and see if Princess can come good at the end. So, fingers crossed, eh? So a further update, and probably a final update, is that we were hunted down by Stephen, who was the guest services manager, trainee guest services manager, that I originally made the complaint to yesterday morning. We're now lunchtime on the following day. He tracked us down at the pool by the aft of the ship, and basically wanted to follow up in person. I really liked that. That was really good, and it was nice that he wanted to take some ownership of that issue. He basically wanted to make sure that we were happy, and he basically wanted to discuss how we felt, and he kindly said that there would be something put in our room later on in the day. Now, this seems to have already happened. When we got back to our room to find out what it was, got to be honest, you were curious to see what he put in the room. What we got was a nice little card that basically was a little written apology. That's the most important thing. There was a small keyring and one of the ship's models as well, which was a nice touch. Not necessarily the gifts. All I was really looking for was the acknowledgement and some response in writing from Princess that actually, yes, we'd made a complaint and that they were going to sort it out. As we said, where we are right now is that we've obviously got a new shower curtain. The bed configuration is still up against the wall. That hasn't been changed. And I did say to Stephen that wasn't essential, but it would be nice to have if it could be done. But we'll see what can be done. The lady Vanessa, who's apparently the supervisor down here, still hasn't made contact with us, so I don't know what's going to happen there. But from our perspective, it's all put to bed right now. Okay, so a further update. We've just had a knock at the door, and Vanessa was there, the mysterious Vanessa, with Stephen stood behind us. So Stephen's deliberately gone and found her and brought her to see us. Now, we like Stephen, isn't he? Good?
Oh, he's brilliant.
He's very good.
Yeah, superstar.
The trainee, fantastic.
Yeah.
Really well done, Stephen. Vanessa's come in and basically discussed the bed configuration and told us that she couldn't do anything about it. We'd have to lump it at the end of the day. But you've got a couple of really valid points here, haven't you?
Well, like number one, obviously, I'm pushed against the wall. That's my side that I sleep on. I don't hear any sounds from the next room, which is great.
Our neighbours aren't that noisy, thankfully, but they could be, couldn't they?
They could be, yes, but like I don't hear anything from there, so that's fine. At night time, when I want to go to the toilet, I've got to shuffle down to the end of the bed and then get off to go in, and it can be a bit tricky because it's a lovely, comfortable, soft bed, but obviously makes it a bit tricky to shuffle to the end sometimes. But it's fine for me. But I was just thinking, you know, if it was someone that had mobility issues, someone a bit older that wasn't so like agile or something like that, that could be quite tricky for them. And also, if you're like a reader and you like to maybe read at night just before you go off to sleep, there's no nightstand there, so
there's no reading lamp there,
light there, so you can't like read, you know, have a light over there and read. You'll find if you're that side but not that side, so you know that could be quite tricky.
I think Nessie's got a really valid point there, in that, you know, if you were less ambulant, getting out in and out of the bed would be more difficult for one of the two people in this room. You know, and I think Princess ought to think about that for this room. That's, you know, and it is the first time we've encountered this on nearly 20 cruises.
No.
Normally when you ask for a double bed configuration, they can configure it so that either of you can easily get in and out of bed.
They often are two single beds pushed together. They often are, but they have a side light either side, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
And we paid for this as a cabin upgrade, and it isn't really what we thought we were bidding on in the sort of cabin upgrade bidding process. And again, if that had been made clear that this was an option, I may have thought twice about bidding for it.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're on day 4 now of this cruise, and yesterday evening we were contacted by the guest services manager, who gave us a very nice and pleasant personal apology for what we experienced. That was really good. Very impressed with that. I'm glad you know, that happened. I think Stephen obviously relayed our issues that we've had, and that we weren't that happy about what had happened to us. So it was a nice touch. He did kindly offer to upgrade us to a balcony cabin and said he would let us know today. Now we've just been contacted this afternoon, and he said that he's no longer able to offer us that upgrade, sadly, which was a little bit disappointing. Obviously we kind of built our hopes up, and we kind of were expecting to be moved and upgraded today. But the reason it was given was that there was a medical emergency this morning, and we did hear the medical calls go out over the tannoy, and that the ill person is in the cabin that was set aside for us. So I guess it's a good use of the cabin, and I shouldn't really grumble about that. That's absolutely spot on, and the right prioritisation, absolutely 100%. But you know, what it means is we're still stuck in our cabin. I think the important thing is, though, is the acknowledgement that, you know, what we found wasn't right, it wasn't acceptable, and it wasn't good enough from Princess. And you know what? That's probably enough. So just 3 days left of this cruise now, and just harking back to my conversation with the guest services manager when he had to inform us that we would no longer get the cabin upgrade that he kindly offered us earlier on in the cruise. He did say he would find another way to compensate us, just as a goodwill gesture, considering we were first-time cruisers and all, and that, you know, we didn't really expect to find congealed blood in our bathroom when we got on board the ship. You know, he took it all on board, but he, you know, with just a few days left of this cruise now, I think we've been forgotten about. And, you know, how do we feel? Well, we did have our hopes raised when we were told we were going to get a balcony cabin for the majority of the cruise, which was great. But totally understood when they couldn't do that because of the medical emergency. That's fine, no problem with that. That's the right use of the cabin. But obviously it's a little bit disappointing to be forgotten about. We have enjoyed the cruise though. The itinerary is amazing, and you know, the islands we visited have been fabulous. And Crown Princess, I mean, it's fine, you know, it's fine. But obviously our experience with the cabin at the beginning of the cruise does still leave a bit of a sour taste. You know, nobody expects to find what we found when we, you know, embarked on what is supposed to be a premium cruise line. Anyway, 3 more days, 2 days at sea, 1 day in New Zealand, and then we disembark and head back to the UK. So this whole episode has been a real eye-opener to Princess Cruises and how they are as a cruise line. And I think a real mark of a company is how they respond when things go wrong. And things can and sadly do go wrong. It's perfectly normal for those things to happen from time to time. And for us, you know, we acknowledge that and understand that, you know, the pressures of the staff in particular, you know, particularly on turnaround day, we understand that they're under a great deal of pressure to turn around the cabins very, very quickly. However, having had the issues, it is really about how Princess have treated us, as particularly as first-time cruisers, once we raised the complaint. And in the early stages of this, we did pretty much all the legwork, having to chase them and chase them again. But I got to commend young Stephen, the trainee guest services relationship manager, who took ownership of the whole issue for us. And he still sees us around the ship. He saw us actually on the island today and said hi, wanted to make sure we were still happy. You know, that young gentleman has got a bright career ahead of him. You know, Princess have got a real star there. But in terms of how overall, in terms of how they resolved the complaint, well, they did the basics. They changed the bloody sort of shower curtain that had congealed blood all over it, you know, and they, you know, we handed in the lost property and stuff like that. Obviously we were disappointed that they couldn't reconfigure the bed, but okay, accept that that's the cabin we've got. I do think though, to make us a sort of a promise of some kind of compensatory sort of aspect of this, and then not to deliver on that promise, well, that probably speaks volumes and says all you need to know. At any rate, there you go. Princess Cruises, we understand them a bit better now. So tell us what you think. Do you think we've overreacted here? Do you think we've been fair and given Princess a really good chance of resolving our complaint? Do you think we shouldn't have complained at all? Do you think we were right to complain? I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions. I'd also like to get your thoughts about how Princess have dealt with us as first-time Princess cruisers. Please do drop us a comment in the box below. Thank you.